Mars Attack is possibly one of my favorite movies of all times. I like sci-fi, I love campy things, I like a little bit of kitsch, and this movie combines those very well. It is also a very affectionate homage to all sci-fi. This movie is just a delight to watch. I watched it several times and I just enjoyed it very much every time. So I was very excited when I saw that there was a game that had that theme, that had Mars Attacks as its theme. There are several games actually, but this one that I'm going to tell about is a miniature game, is a combat game. So even better in my book, since I really enjoy combat games and games with a strong thematic feel. So, Mars Attacks, the miniature game, it's a game published by Mantic. It is a miniature game, it has miniatures that come out assembled already. Well, it's a single piece of plastic for each miniature, so you do not have to build anything. You may have to paint them though, because some of the miniatures really look alike, so if you paint them you can make them more different from one another. I play with unpainted miniatures and sometimes I did have a moment of uncertainty about, wait, which miniature is this one? What kind of weapon is really that character holding? Minor thing. Still, it's good, I believe, to have a miniature game where you do not have to assemble anything. In this game, one player plays the role of the humans trying to accomplish missions or to survive alien attacks, and on the other side you have the Martians that really do look like the Martians in the game. And this is mainly a game for 2 players. I guess you could play with teams, but pretty much 2 players at the core. Also pretty solitaire friendly. There are cards, but they do not really create too much of a problem if you're trying to play the game solitaire. Anyhow, Mars Attacks, the miniature game. Let me show how the game works. The game is played on this paper map, which you will customize by using these plastic terrain pieces. What you see here is just a part of the terrain pieces. There are more that come with the game. You can connect them to create different configurations from game to game. There is a good list of scenarios. There are 10 scenarios. You choose which one you want to play, and that will give you setup instructions and instructions about the forces to use, and also victory conditions and the ways to acquire victory points. There are 3 main groups of actors in this movie. You have humans that are divided in US troopers, and the second group is heroes. Here's troopers. You have different models with different weapons. For example, here you have a light machine gun, here you have a sergeant. Different models with different weapons have different stats and also different abilities. In the rulebook you have a section with the stats of each type of character, but I highly recommend that you download a player aid, which is available on BoardGameGeek, which gives you all the relevant information about stats and abilities. It's really useful and well done player aid. Then you have heroes. Heroes are individuals with extraordinary abilities. Each of them has a description in the rulebook, a description of what they can do, what their abilities are. There are also hero points that they will spend to use their abilities. Nice models. As you can see, all models are already assembled. It's one single piece of plastic ready to play. Even though in some cases probably you will want to paint them nevertheless, because there are some models that kind of look alike, and I guess that if you paint them then it would be easier for you to tell them apart as you're playing. And of course you have the Martians, otherwise this game wouldn't be Mars Attack, would be Nobody Attacks, or whatever you want to call it. And also the Martians have different weapons. This is a freeze gun, different models. Again, these guys will go on the board together with the humans, troopers, and possibly heroes, depending on the scenario that you decide to play. At the beginning of the game, players receive 4 cards each from this deck of cards, and during the game they can play them to activate effects to their advantage. Each card is divided in two sections, one describing the effect that will benefit the alien player and the other one the effect that will benefit the human player. Some effects you simply play and resolve, the effect described on the text. Some effects are support effects that you sort of build up. You put them down face up on the table, and then you build sets of support cards of the same type, and then when you finally decide to activate that effect, the effect is described by the number of cards that you have. For example, I have 2 cards in a hit ray set, then when I activate the hit ray, I use this line here. If I had 3, then I would use this line here. Also, you have events. When events come out of the deck, you simply resolve them. These are unpredictable things that may happen, and everybody's favorite event, of course, is the Mrrr, which brings the burning cattle on the board. The burning cattle will run across the board, moving randomly, may stampede people. It's just one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic elements of the movie. I'm very happy that they included it in the game. But now, move along, burning cattle, we got a review to film. Now, players can use their cards. At the end of the round, they can discard their cards, and then at the beginning of the next round, they'll fill up their hand back to 4 cards. So, when you play the cards depends on the effect of the card itself. Players, during a round, activating, taking actions. During a player's action, the active player has several options. The active player can choose to activate 1 or 2 models, or it can choose to activate a model and play a card, or could choose to play 1 or 2 cards without activating models, but only if all models have already been activated. After you activate a model, you place a token there to indicate that that model was activated, and you continue like this, alternating turns until all models have been activated. Then at that point you reset the board and you start the new round. When a model is activated, the model can do one of several things. A model can move by 1 space, and after moving by 1 space, could move by a 2nd space. Models can move orthogonally or diagonally, following restrictions that terrain features may create. Or after moving 1 space, a character could choose to shoot. Or the character could also choose not to move and then simply to shoot. If you shoot without moving, then you have a bonus. So these are pretty much the basic options. To move 1 space, to move 2 spaces, 1 space, and shoot. Shoot without moving with a bonus. Now, when you're shooting at an opponent, you look at the stats for the miniature that is firing, and looking at the stats, you see the number to hit, which is the number that you're trying to match or exceed on the dice that you roll. When you're attacking, you start by rolling a basic number 3 dice. This game uses D8s. You have a basic pool of 3 dice. You have plus 1 die if you aimed, that is if you're firing without moving. You can get an extra 1 if your character has a clear shot. That means that the character can see the target without any obstruction. Not seeing the target partially, but seeing the target fully. And to determine line of sight, you simply get close to where the character is, with your eye as close to the eye level of the character, and you see what the character sees from there. Once you have your pool of dice, you roll them, and you see how many hits you scored. Each number which is over your number to hit is a hit, is a success. In this case, for example, if I was firing in that situation, I would have 2 successes. But something pretty interesting is that if you get an 8, not only is that a success, but you also get to reroll the die. And you may get maybe another 8. And then maybe a 3, which is not so good. So between the 7 and the 2 8s that I rolled, I had 3 successes. When I'm firing at an opponent, the opponent will need to roll dice based on the survive ability. Again, the number of dice that are rolled by the defender is 3. The defender has a success for each number that is rolled, which is
equal to or higher than the survive number of the defender. And suppose that I have a survival number here, number of successes in the survival, which is of only 1. So in this case, I would have, in a fair attack, 3 successes for the attacker, 1 success in the survival for the defender. The attack or the firing character is higher, that means that the defender is killed. The defender may have armor, they may absorb part of the damage, but in many cases the defender will be killed. If you simply have a successful attack which is not stopped by armor, the model of the enemy is removed from the board. You may also be that you are entering a space with an opponent as you are moving, and in that case then you have to fight. Close combat works in a very similar way to the way I explained earlier. Again, you have for the attacker a base pool of 3 dice that need to be rolled, plus 1 die for the attacker if the attacker moved into the square in which the attack is taking place to simulate the effect of the momentum of the charge. Also, if a side has friends in that same square that can support the attack, that side also gets plus 1 dice for presence of friends in the square where the attack is being resolved. So again, the attacker rolls, and this time counts successes based on the fight number. On the fight number of the model that is attacking. You count how many successes the attacker has, then the opponent will get to roll a base pool of 3 dice, and the opponent can choose to defend in a melee with the fight ability, with the fight stat, or with the survive stat. Again, the defender, whoops, almost, the melee was so intense that the camera almost fell. The defender will roll dice too. The defender will count successes. If the number of successes of the defender and the attacker is the same, then nothing happens. If the defender chose to use fight, that means the defender is fighting back. So if both players, attacker and defender, are using fight, and one of them has a number of successes which is higher than that of the opponent, that side is the winner, and the other side, the loser, gets to be killed. So if you're using fight in defense, you get a chance of killing the opponent. If you are using survive and you get more successes than the attacker does, you don't kill the attacker, but you simply have managed to defend successfully. There are several game effects that will rattle a character. A character that is rattled is simply down on the floor, and when the character activates, the only thing the character can do, well, the first thing the character can do is to stand up. That consumes one of the actions that the character has in an activation. If the character is rattled and stands up in a square that contains enemy models, then the character also has to fight the enemy models with which he's engaged.
The game looks good on the table. I do not build miniatures and I do not build terrain, but I like playing with that stuff, with that toy-like stuff, like the next person. So I really enjoy the possibility that this game gives me of creating my own terrain, creating my own little area of the semi-destroyed town with aliens, with survivors, with heroes, with aliens, with burning cattle, without having to build anything. For somebody who's not into that type of manual aspect of gaming, this is great. Of course, this would be absolutely pointless if the game was not good. Actually, I think this game is good. I know I enjoyed it. I find it pretty enjoyable. I like all the options that the players have, even though at the core is the good old move and attack, or attack only, move only, aim and attack. Still, there are a couple of twists here that make things pretty interesting. For example, I like the combination between a grid-based board and continuous space. Usually when you're playing without the grids and you're moving miniatures in open space, in continuous space, you have to measure things, you have to measure distances, which is always a little bit annoying. If you're playing on a grid, then you don't have to do that. You simply count spaces on the grid, but at the same time, you have less tactical possibilities because all areas in your hex, in the section of the grid where you are the same. I like the fact that here you have the best of both worlds. You can still place your miniatures tactically to gain a line of sight, to hide, and there is a nice balance there, a nice trade-off. If I place myself in a position where I can see you, most likely I'm in a position where somebody else can see me too. But at the same time, you do not have to measure things. You do not have that aspect which always slows down things a little bit in miniature gaming. It's one of the main draws of that style of gaming. So definitely the spatial organization of the board is a big plus. The components, as I said, are pretty attractive. The rule book explains things fairly well. A couple of questions remained unanswered after I read the book, but the player aid that is available on Board Game Geek solved them all and really made playing the game pretty accessible, pretty easy. And the action here is really what matters the most. The action is fun. The action is really fulfilling, because even though the core of actions that you have is standard, there are many ways in which those can be implemented, many ways in which your team can work together, and that is really key. You can have a character that rattles the opponent, and another character that exploits that to go in and to attack them further, or to try to retrieve something that the mission asks you to retrieve in order to win the game. The teams work organically, even though in most teams, most miniatures are pretty much the same. I'm talking about the Martians and the US Troopers, very different from the heroes, they're unique. But even in the sections of the teams where the characters are more or less the same, you still sequence actions and combine actions, or you can do so, and you should do so, in such a way that it feels like the team is more than the sum of the parts. The action is pretty exciting. The two sides specialize in different ways. The range weapons of the aliens are pretty powerful, and they seem to be pretty good at those. The humans tend to do better in close combat, but they need to get close to the opponents that are firing against them. But in general, there are just so many options, so many possibilities, tactical possibilities offered by the board, by the action, by the challenges that you have to face. And when you also factor in all the things that the heroes can do, then you have even more flavor, more replay value, more theme. Does the game capture the spirit of the movie? Yes and no. If you look at the action on the board, there's a good miniature game. This is a solid miniature combat game. I do not know that it does capture the spirit, but I do not know how you could possibly do it. As you have people exploding in a funny way. I don't know that you can recapture that mixture of comedy and action. The action is good, so that is great already. The miniatures are funny, but if you're playing the game, you're not looking at the details of the funny heads of the Martians, then you kind of miss that in part. What brings back the theme are the cards and effects such as the burning cattle. This is key of to the design. I would have been really disappointed if there wasn't this element in the game. I'm glad it is there. The cards with their art, with their effects, do bring back some of that zany quality of the movie. On top of being game effects that work well with the overall experience, I like the fact of the sets that you create. The effect will be more powerful if you build it up, if you take some time. But of course, maybe if you wait too long, that was a bad idea, because by the time you had the effect, you have lost the game already. And a lot of other interaction of cards and effects, some of which I don't want to tell you on purpose because it's fun to find those things out. Those effects are good. So the humor to me comes mainly from the cards and from other game effects. At the core, you have a combat game, a miniature combat game, which is, I believe, an excellent way of introducing somebody to miniature gaming. By miniature gaming, I intend not just games with miniatures, but that type of game in which you're moving, attacking, interacting in a space as a continuous aspect that is not only grid-based. Generally speaking, this is a light miniature game that, however, has definitely enough decisions and meat to be a very rewarding form of entertainment for somebody who plays more complex games. It looks good, it is easy to teach, it plays well, it has a lot of replay value. I know that this game was on Kickstarter, so I'm sure that those who kickstarted it got a lot of extras. I just have the base set and I'm really happy with it. There's just so much gameplay that I can get out of this, so many different scenarios, situations, and game sessions that I can have out of this set that I don't think I will feel the need of expanding the game anytime soon. Mars Attacks, the miniature game, maybe not the same thing as the movie, but that probably would have been impossible, but a solid light miniature war game, and to me that is pretty good. That's a good thing in my book.